Good afternoon. This is Randy Brunson with Centurion Advisory Group here on this episode of Stewarding Family Wealth. With me is my co-host, Miss Sandy Leroux. Sandy, greetings.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for being with us, both Sandy and our listeners. Going to do a couple of podcasts here. The first one is going to cover three core principles that we have found serve so well: the principle of applied wisdom, the principle of leadership or governance, and then the principle of uncertainty. By the way, if you want to learn more about our company, Centurion Advisory Group, you can go to centurionag.com, look us up online. We're easy to find. But back to the task at hand. Let's talk about the principle of applied wisdom. Some environments are principles-based, and some environments are, let's call it, rules-based. And much of this, in one context, can do with regulation. But more than that, what we have found is that principles, living by principles or applying principles to your life, can just yield a top quality outcome. And let me talk about a few examples here. In our country, there is a law that says don't kill people, right? That's not a nice thing to do, is to kill people. So there are laws in the book that says don't kill. So here's what the law can do when it comes to not killing. First of all, the law can only do two things. Rules or laws can tell you what to do and what not to do. And the second thing that the law can do is to describe penalties if you break the law. Okay? So law says don't kill. If you do kill, then typically there are bad consequences. You're going to go to trial, you're going to go to jail, you're going to get killed yourself, just whatever. So that's all the law can do, is it can define what not to do and then describe penalties. So really all the law can do is describe or set minimum standards of behavior. So a rules-based environment, all it can do is describe minimum standards of behavior. However, a principles-based environment, describe it like this: principles-based environment can cause us to aspire to a different way of engagement. For example, let's agree that we really don't need to kill anybody. But what about hating someone? Okay? So if we choose to hate someone, we are effectively killing a relationship, and at the end of the day, we are also destroying ourselves, because retaining or internalizing hate leads to bitterness, and it literally destroys our soul and spirit. Okay? So there's the death of ourselves if we choose to live by a principle of love and forgiveness, choose to live by a principle of love or forgiveness instead of a principle of hate, then we can experience experience life itself instead of the death of ourselves. Should I stop there? Is that too much information?
No,
bail me out, Sandy.
No, that makes sense to me. Would you then say that a principle, would that also be kind of like a value-based?
I don't know the answer to that question. Should we write that down and think about that and turn it into another podcast?
Yeah, just made me think
sure.
of that. Because,
that works for me.
You know, the value is to appreciate someone else, value
another person.
Yeah. So that's why I was wondering if that's also kind of.
Yes.
But I'll write this down.
Yes, because we the principle would be where we choose to value someone else. Therefore, we choose not to hate them. We choose to express love. We choose to extend forgiveness. Some of those kinds of things to enhance that relationship, and so that we also can be whole and well. Mm-hmm. For example, another rule. Okay, we have a contract to buy a car. Okay, and so since we don't have $30,000 or $35,000 or $40,000 in pocket change that day, we finance it. Okay, and so the financing contract says send money every month, and it also says if you don't send money every month, then all these various and sundry things are going to happen. You're going to pay us more. We're going to come get your car. Yeah. We're going to come, collect your other stuff and sell it, but we're going to get our money. Okay, so that's the rules-based environment. Describes what you have to do, and if you don't, then these are the negative consequences.
Right.
But the principle is that if we have shaken hands, even if it's a written handshake, because a contract is a written handshake, okay? Even if it's a written handshake, the principle is honor the commitments that we have made, okay?
Right.
Why? because it allows us to live with ourselves. What we want to see when we wake up in the morning and look in the mirror is we want to see an image that we are proud to look at, that we're pleased to look at, we're at peace with, that we can say, okay, I have been good to my word.
It's an integrity thing.
It is. So there's a principle of integrity. That's very good. Principle of integrity. Principle of valuing others. Principle of integrity. For those of you listening, no, we do not spend hours practicing. We have a few notes, but we found it just, hey, let's just share a few thoughts, so which is exactly what we're doing. So another thought along the lines, the general freedom that we have in our country, the laws allow us, the rules allow us to do pretty much anything that we want to do. Okay? Mm-hmm. You want to live here, travel there, do this with your life, do that with your life, as long as your freedoms end before somebody else's nose, okay? Yeah. Then we're free to do pretty much whatever we want to do, all right? But there's a principle involved there of choosing to live not just for ourselves, but for the benefit of others as well. What I've experienced, the people that I've met along the way who are completely self-focused and self-absorbed are some of the most miserable people I've met, because the only radio station they are listening to, it is not Gwinnett Business RadioX, where you can hear this podcast, okay? They are listening to WII-FM, What's in It for Me. It's the only radio station they ever listen to. They're only looking out. And the principle is, so the first principle, did you say, was valuing others? And the second one was what?
Integrity.
And so how do we define this principle?
Selflessness, maybe?
You're good. You should have your own podcast.
You're the best.
Principle of selflessness. That's very good. Where we choose to watch out not only for our own interests, but also for the interests of others. Right?
Yeah. Could you imagine if everybody was thinking of someone else and not just of themselves? What a different place this would be.
Yeah, somebody should write a song like that. Who did that song?
Say,
what a beautiful world that would be. Was that Louis Armstrong that recorded that? I don't know.
I'm not
okay. Our engineer says yes, that was Louis Armstrong. So you guys look that up. It's a beautiful, great song. Yeah, it's such a wonderful voice. What a beautiful world by Louis Armstrong. So look that up. So the principles of applied wisdom. Okay, so for principle of valuing others, integrity. Valuing others is not only choosing not to kill, but choosing to love and to forgive. Value integrity, which is be good to your word, even when it's difficult.
Yeah.
And finally was principle of selflessness, which is choosing to focus on others, not just on yourself.
Yep.
Related to this is a principle of leadership. Again, I made some notes, or example, encouragement, and externally focused, which is going to come back to the selflessness thing. But in terms of setting an example, and here's something I've watched over the last year in particular. It's been sort of an interesting world in 2020 and early 2021. I wrote down an example here in terms of leadership, because in so many cases, what I've found is the longer I live and the more business experience I have and the more people experience I have, I believe that the greatest impact is simply the example that I set, the example that you set, the example that others set. And when I think of example, I'm taken back so many times to my friend Bill. And Sandy, I know you know this story. I've talked about it. My friend Bill, he's about 10 years older than me. He was a Vietnam veteran. We lost him last August. We're just great friends, one of my best personal friends. And in the 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago now, this goes back actually 30 years, when his son hit middle school at about the age of 13, his son went to a very dark place in life. And Bill, he and I spent a lot of time together during those years, and he's told me then and he's told me since that on any given day, he did not know where his son was, who he was with, whether he was alive or whether he was dead. And he never knew when he got a phone call, whether it would be Jeremy saying, come pick me up from somewhere, or whether it would be the coroner calling to say they'd found his body, or whether it would be the police calling to say we have him in custody somewhere. Just no clue. Morning, noon, or night, 2 o'clock in the morning. He said the phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning, had no clue what he was going to hear on the other end of the phone. And I learned there in the last few months of Bill's life, spent a lot of time with him last summer, and we talked about lots of stuff. But Bill said every single day during this time frame, and that period for Jeremy lasted about 10 years. And today Jeremy's 40 years old, has boys of his own. He's a phenomenal father, owns several businesses, taking care of his mother. It just what an incredible example of a young man that was able to come through a dark period, experience restoration, redemption, reconciliation. Beautiful story. But Bill said that during those times, he called Jeremy every single day. A lot of times he just left a message on a cell phone, but he called Jeremy every single day. And I learned also at Bill's memorial service that Bill's father, Leroux, wrote to Jeremy, wrote him a letter every other day.
Wow.
So you see this coming across the generations. Lewis's care for Bill and Bill's brother, Bill's care for his own son, and now we're watching this, how Jeremy is taking care of his boys. But at Bill's memorial service, Jeremy said what he learned from his dad, okay, and this is setting the example, is suit up, stand up, show up, and never, never, never quit. And so sometimes you don't feel like getting up and going to, or you don't feel like this, you don't feel like that, all right? But so many times you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it because you are setting an example for others of how to stand up, keep moving forward, with a great attitude, with a smile on your face, and with a good heart, regardless of what your particular circumstances might be at that given moment. And that's what Bill did so well. He trained as an engineer. Professionally, he was an attorney, but just an incredible example for his family and for me as one of his friends. I always think of that. You want to think about example.
Say it again.
What's that?
Suit up.
Suit up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Show up.
Show up.
And never, never quit.
Never, never, never quit.
I had to write that down.
Yep.
Yep.
And
if you told me a million times, and it just really stood out today.
Yeah.
So,
and if you're looking for examples about those who have set good examples, go back and read a couple of the bios about Winston Churchill. Read some of the stuff that Winston Churchill has written, because Winston Churchill, throughout his adult life, had several experiences that others, both during his life and since then, historians have deemed failures. One goes back to World War I, around Dunkirk. I'll let you historians look that up and read about it. Okay, and then another one, he dealt with depression. Churchill did, and after World War I was over, and after he left the British administration after World War I, he went to Chartwell, which is the family home, and he wrote, and he was an artist. He would sit and paint, and he spent the 30s doing that, and he also spent the 30s warning his countrymen about this emerging leader in Germany by the name of Adolf Hitler. And he was consistently ignored. They thought they could make peace. You do not make peace with dictators. You speak to people in language they understand. And if they understand force, you address them with force. Now, I'm off into military strategy. It has nothing to do with this podcast. But if people understand death and destruction, then visit them with death and destruction. It's a language that they understand.
Yeah.
Go back and read Norman Schwarzkopf's, anyway, way off the subject. But that's on communication. We'll do a session on communication sometimes.
It's still about examples, though.
It is. Then the second component about leadership is I wrote down encouragement. All right. One of the things that I continue to learn, you can bail me out here, is one of the things I'm continuing to learn is to treat employees just as I would clients. What do you want? Okay, so for the employers listening to this, here's the question. How much do we know about what our employees want out of life? What do you want? That basic question that precedes all big dreams and plans of action. What do you want? All right. Then, with you applying your skills, gifts, and talents here at this place of employment, okay, serving the company well, how could I as an employer, how can the other employers listening help the employees get what they want? Is there a way to merge those two together so that the employee can live the life they've dreamed about as a result of our common work together? Okay.
So true. And you have really that is something you work towards regularly with me and Stephanie, or Stephanie and I, whichever.
Whatever that is.
Yes, one of those.
I know.
Grammar's not my thing right now, but no, and it's true. I definitely think that is a good leadership thing, and it's a good approach, because that is how we talk to our clients, and anybody for that matter. Really, honestly, I've heard you time and time again when we've met with people, even that isn't a client. Your goal is to learn more and listen to them, and your question is what is it you want?
Yeah.
And that's a good way to learn more about people and kind of unify our goals. But yeah.
Yeah. I've thought about this in terms of encouragement. There's always an opportunity to share a word of encouragement. What did I write down here? I learned years ago that there are 2 sentences that I'm extremely careful with. I heard this somewhere else. This is not original. Okay. Years ago, I heard somebody say, when you start a sentence with I am, or a sentence with you are, be extremely careful what words come after that, because any sentence that starts with I am or you are defining an incredible, beautiful, glorious creation made in the image of God. And you're about to define that, so be extremely careful what comes after that. I remember sharing that with a mother one time, and she, months later, she said, thank you for that, because she had 2 teenage daughters, and it's so easy to, if the room's not clean, if they want to do this, they've gotten out the wine bucket and they're, pouring it all over the place, that kind of thing's like,
yeah.
Stop, or whatever you say, it's tempting to say you are, and so on and so forth. But Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin Airlines and lots of other entities like that, anytime he makes a post, I'll read it. It's a way you can learn from somebody whose financial statement is larger than yours. He and I together are worth a lot of money, but I can tell you for a fact that Richard Branson without my financial statement is worth a lot of money. So anyhow, his focus is on his team members first, customers second, shareholders third, and then the larger community. And I've thought about that. That's a good focus, because as those employers listening to this, take care of your team members. They will take care of your customers and clients.
Yep.
Then the shareholders typically come in third. And unfortunately, there's an economic theory that in some elements of our society that the focus in business should be first, last, and always to maximize shareholder value. And I simply disagree.
Business results, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes. Have to be profitable. You've got to have reserves so that you can continue to be a sustainable business. But I've had personal experience with what's called a reduction in force. Just means you're out of a job. You turn in your company car keys, your phone card, your credit card, and have to call somebody to pick you up. Yeah, you're unemployed. So, good, bad, or otherwise, maximizing shareholder value at the expense of everything else, I don't subscribe to that philosophy. All right. Richard Branson says, take care of your team members, then they'll take care of your customers, then watch out for shareholders, and then the larger community. And I think that's a great order in which to approach that subject. Then the other thing I wrote down was to be externally focused. It gets back to what we were talking about the principle of selflessness.
Right.
Who said this to me? I don't remember anymore. But fathers with children in particular, and I have what the children call I can go into father voice mode. Okay, that kind of thing, and I don't think I do it much, but it doesn't matter if I go into father voice mode or not. Still, anyone that's a father, when they speak to their children, they speak with the authority of the father, and what they say about those children defines the reality for those children and often defines who those children believe they are. Okay? And for those of you listening who are fathers and employers and bosses, if you will, okay, you have a double responsibility, because every word you speak defines and has an impact on those listening, your team members and employees, your children. You have an enormous amount of responsibility to govern your words well, to make sure that they are always wholesome and uplifting and instructive and encouraging, that they are not unwholesome and coarse and rude and destructive. Okay? I'm saying that for my benefit, right?
No. I think that's just a good thing to remember, because we have moments. All of us do.
Yes, yes. Something else I heard along the way in terms of making decisions around money or different situations is when we are called upon to make a decision about anything, but especially if it comes to a dollar bill, and if we're right on the edge on the decision, I learned from someone, always make the decision that benefits the other person before it benefits you. You know, if there's a yes, we paid that, no, we didn't, don't ruin a relationship. You know, just you have to be really, really careful. The guy that I listened to had done very well in business, very, very well in business, and he said he had learned he could be right. You know, if he knew he was right, he could push the issue, run the risk of ruining a relationship. He could be right. He could be rich. He chose the latter. It just don't ruin relationships over details like that. So the other thing that I've learned in terms of just being externally focused on others is, I'll call it the three nevers. And there's three things I've learned never to do. You never mess with someone's money. You'd never mess with their spouse. And you'd never mess with their ego. Never mess with those three things. Again, I heard that from someone like that as well. That's really about all I have to say about being externally focused.
I'm thinking it'd be good just to kind of come back and summarize kind of what we've said, just so everybody will kind of get what the whole.
Let me share. That's a good point. Let me do that. Let me share one other thought that will lead us into the next podcast, and that's a principle of uncertainty.
Yes.
Okay. Now, uncertainty is always with us. Most of the time, and especially economic uncertainty has been with us front and center the last 12 to 15 months. But see, uncertainty is always with us, but most of the time our lives appear to be, or we perceive our lives to be stable enough where the uncertainty is in the background and we don't experience it. So health situations can cause uncertainty to pop up. A job layoff or business failure can cause uncertainty to be front and center. But it's been decades since most of us have experienced the kind of uncertainty that we experienced in 2020.
Yeah.
Right? And so the question is, how do you prepare for uncertainty? Learn two things. First of all, you live in the day because none of us can say with certainty that we are going to wake up tomorrow morning. This could be the last day we have been given.
Right.
This day is all we have to make a difference, to make an impact in somebody else's life. Financially, how you prepare for uncertainty is you have reserves in place. Right. I'll tell you a story about a lady. Now, I'll call her Sue. And we've had the opportunity to serve Sue for several years at the office. She's mid to late 50s. She has just outstanding financial habits. She's always prepared well, always had a reserve, kept her debt load extremely low.
Yeah.
All right. In the first quarter of 2020, there were two things that created enormous amounts of uncertainty for many people. In Sue's case, she had spent a 30-year career in events management and trade show management. By March the 31st of 2020, she was effectively and completely unemployed. There were no live in-person events in 2020. She was unemployed. In addition to that, the stock market in the first quarter of 2020 dropped like a rock. She had a choice to make. How does she respond to this combination of events? And by the way, just speaking of clarity and truth, let me share a thought. Okay, what all of us experienced last year in terms of isolation and lockdowns and so on and so forth, those were not caused by the virus. Those were decisions that were made either by us as individuals or by state and federal decision makers in response to the virus. Okay? I want to separate correlation and causation. The virus did not cause the lockdowns. The virus did not cause the isolation. Decisions that people made created isolation, created a lockdown environment, created virtual events instead of in-person events. I'm not suggesting they were right or wrong decisions. I'm attempting to offer clarity between correlation and causation. It helps improve the quality of your thinking when you can do that. Okay, so anyway, back to the point at hand. So Sue saw her portfolio drop in value significantly, and her job just go away. Here's what she decided to do. What she decided to do was to spend more time outside exercising and enjoying the beauty of the day. And she decided to put more money in the stock market. The reason that Sue could do that is that she had prepared. She had significant cash reserve. She had enough cash on hand outside all of her investments. Okay, she had enough cash on hand to cover her expenses for a full 12 months.
Good habits.
She had prepared. Okay, and so she can go out and take a walk. She's a runner. She can jog some, do that 7 days a week instead of being locked in an office and all that kind of thing. And her decision to restructure the portfolio to make it more aggressive served her so incredibly well over the last 12 months. How could she do that? She had prepared for it. Okay, and so we're going to wrap up this podcast. And Sandy, what else do you want to say before we call it a day here?
You know what? I think we just talk about suit up, stand up. That one just stood out to me. Show up and never quit.
Good.
That's kind of what we need to be doing in these times. So, yeah.
Good. All right, we're gonna call it a wrap on this particular episode of the Stewarding Family Wealth podcast. You can find this podcast at iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. It's brought to you by Centurion Advisory Group. Our specialty is working with successful individuals and business owners, helping them make decisions around life, business, money, aligning their investment portfolio with their values, paying less in taxes. Who wants to pay taxes, right? And making sure that they transfer not only their assets, but their values across generations to those that will carry the torch after they're gone. So that's it for now. We'll see you on the next trip.